Good evening and welcome to our Tuesday, June 4th Select Board meeting. We know the meeting has been properly warned because the board entered into executive session at 5:30 this evening. At this time, we will take a look at the May 21st minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Moving on to chair's remarks. I do have chair's remarks this evening. I would like to just kind of keep us on track on where we are in our select board year. So we're currently moving into the summer season. And one way to kind of think about this time of year is we just came out of town meeting and we're moving into our new phase. And summer's a great time to bring your ideas to the board, particularly ideas that you would love to see funded in our next fiscal year, ideas that you don't think were already budgeted based on approvals at the representative town meeting. This is a great time to do that between now and the end of August, and I will give more reminders as we move through the season. But after we move into September and going through the fall, the board is really going to be focused on budget items and items that you are excited about that would require funding that come in during the fall. We're going to be a lot less excited about hearing because at that point we're moving into really making sure that we can find as much room as we can to implement the things that we must implement and the things that you wish we would implement. So summer is for ideas, fall is for creating the budget. Okay, those are my remarks. Peter, do you have manager's remarks?
I do. I just have an update based on a question that arose during the discussion at the last meeting when we were considering the solid waste budget prior to when the select board approved it at that meeting. There was a question about where our materials go, particularly the recycling now that we've gone to single stream recycling. So we received information back from our vendors for these services, both regarding the town's, the garbage, where that goes, and where the recycling goes. And I'd like to take a minute just to highlight the summary of that.
Yeah.
The garbage actually goes to 3 different places. It depends on factors that are determined between the 3 separate landfill operators and our hauler, Triple T. It goes sometimes to Coventry, Vermont, sometimes to Bethlehem, New Hampshire, and other times to Concord, New Hampshire. The answer regarding the recycling is much more complicated because it varies product by product. But I think the overarching important part of this is there was a concern that particularly after shifting to single stream and in general, because we all know that the markets for recycling have become very volatile, there's a concern that maybe some of that recycling stream was also being diverted into garbage and just going through the motions of recycling and then ending up in a landfill anyway. Based on the information that we've received from Casella, who is the processor of our recycling, that's actually not the case. So our cardboard materials that they receive from us are shipped domestically to mills that make new cardboard boxes. The mixed paper is shipped domestically to a mill that makes pulp and ships it overseas. Pulp is used in a variety of different sort of low-end products that are no longer recognizable as paper. Newsprint is an interesting one. It's shipped both domestically and overseas, depending on the market at the moment when they're sending off a shipment of it. The reason why it sometimes goes so far away is because overseas people are still reading newspapers. And in the United States, not so much. And so there isn't as much of a market. The newsprint, when it gets recycled into new newsprint. And there isn't as much of a market for reclaimed newsprint in the United States. So they do, there is still a domestic mill that accepts the shipping from Rutland in Vermont, but that's currently going through a retrofit, and so they often are shipping it farther away and sometimes overseas. HDPE, which is like milk jugs and detergent bottles, is shipped domestically to make a variety of new plastic products, including car parts, buckets, and toys. PET, PET, are basically water bottles, and those are shipped domestically to make new water bottles and, interestingly, fleece and carpet. So fleece seasonal wear is at least partially recycled plastic, and so is carpet, some carpets at least. Tin is shipped domestically to make new tin cans and other metal products. And aluminum is the one commodity that is almost 100% recyclable. It's just recycled over and over and over again. And the largest buyer in the United States of recycled aluminum is Anheuser-Busch.
Big surprise.
Tubs and lids, which are the less readily recyclable plastics, in the 3 through 7 range, are recycled typically into paint cans. And the note that we received says next time you buy a can of paint, check the bottom, and you're likely to see some indication of it being made with recycled materials. Glass is the one commodity at this point that is still problematic, which is pretty interesting because there was a while when the volatility started a few years back when glass was pretty dependable and some of the plastic products were really hard to get rid of. Now glass has lost its value. And so they refer to this as the commodity of most concern right now, and they're soliciting help from legislators to require a certain amount of recycled glass to be used in certain processes. But right now they do the best they can to sell the glass off to make new glass, or in some cases for roadwork and construction sites. You can mix in recycled glass into some of those building products. So.
If we
That's
added to
excellent.
the deposit, it would have a lot more value.
That was very thorough. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, do other members of the board have committee reports or general remarks?
I have a general remark.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
a few general remarks.
Excellent.
The merger of the town school districts of Brattleboro, Dummerston, Putney, and Guilford continues apace, notwithstanding the ongoing court deliberations. And on Tuesday, June 11th at 7 p.m. At the Dummerston School, there'll be a presentation of the combined $50 million budget. The following Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. at Guilford School, there'll be another public presentation, information meeting about the $50 million budget. And then on Tuesday, the 25th of June, at 7 p.m. in the high school gym, there'll be a vote of the residents of all towns, all registered voters in all towns are members of the district, and the meeting is at 7 p.m. at the Union High School to discuss and vote on the new combined budget.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You say you have a few comments, or was that basically all encompassing?
I'm not going to comment.
Oh, okay. Any
I
other?
will one comment. Yeah, the court is still at work.
You want to interrogate? Does Mr. Scholes wish to be
Yeah.
interrogated?
I hope if I made a mistake, you're going to fix it.
Hi, Franz Reichsman from the Finance Committee. David, did you say that neither of the informational meetings is in Brattleboro?
That's correct.
Because that's a change from last I had heard.
Yep, they are for I'm not sure exactly why they are moved to Guilford, and give me a minute.
Okay, just wanted to make sure,
double check.
because I was
Thank
planning
you.
on
Yeah,
showing
no,
up at
that's a great
Academy
idea,
School or
and I
something.
just got the press release on that, because it was in Brattleboro. And I thought today, I heard that it would be in Guilford.
Thanks for that question,
Oh,
because
no,
it
you're
sounds like
right.
good
It's at-
information.
Thank you. It's at the Wyndham Regional Career Center.
Okay.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Great.
Yep, thank you.
Great. Any other members of the board have committee reports or general remarks or announcements?
I have something.
Timothy?
About 10 days ago, I was lucky enough to take a small portion of my day and go to a meeting called the World of Opiates. It is not the worst Disney ride you've ever heard of. It actually was a very serious meeting, and a really great one put on by BMH and our own fire department, and a bunch of other agencies were there and presenting, including Chad Simmons from COSU, Brattleboro Retreat, our own police department. Susie Walker was there from Turning Point. State officials were down for this. And I didn't have a huge part of my day because I was working to be able to spend there, but I wish I had, because there were so many great takeaways in it. And I think we have another one coming up, which I'll mention at the end. But I just wanted to throw out a couple of statistics that really struck me at this meeting. Windham County, our own Windham County, has 7% of our state's population. And we have had the 19% of the total of Vermont's overdose fatalities. So if you think about that, we have been hit very hard, especially in the last year, with overdose fatalities from opiates. And another one that's just popping into my head is that 8,000 Vermont residents across the state are in recovery, which equivocates to 1.6% of our total population, if I have those numbers right. That's pretty stunning, too. So it really started to sink in with me the level of the crisis that we're going through right now. And as we know, we've been hearing a lot about supply side law enforcement activities, and that's very important, I think. But on the other side of it, we have to look to the demand, and we have to put resources and attention and time and energy into supply side. Demand side. So we really have to work on that as well. And prevention goes a long way towards that. And treatment, of course. So I just wanted to point out that there's so many talented people working on this problem right now. We as a board and as a town, we have limited ability to battle this, but luckily we have amazing people that are helping us, not only our own first responders and our town employees, but a large number of groups, all of whom are kind of chipping in with Project CARE right now. But we should be ongoing talking about how we're going to more fully fund that program. We should continue to talk about housing. And I just really wanted to say that going to this meeting was really inspiring because of all the people that are really helping. And I'd like to just underline that because so many folks are out there helping in positive ways. And I think it's a much better thing to do than to focus on some of the effects. And we've seen this recently in social media postings, in possibly anonymous letters to the editor, which I find less than helpful for our community. I think we all have to come with our own perspectives and our own opinions, but I don't think we should do it anonymously. We should be working towards a positive outcome for everyone. So with that, I'll shut up, but please come on the 20th. There's going to be a public version of a forum on the opiate epidemic at Brattleboro's own Central Fire Station, and that's on June 20th, 2019, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. BMH and our own fire department is going to be co-hosting this, and there will be a panel consisting of representatives from Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, Project CARE, Turning Point, Groundworks, Brattleboro Retreat, and the high-intensity drug trafficking area. I'm not sure what that is, but so I encourage everyone to come out for that. I think it's going to be covered by BCTV as well, and it'll all be part of the larger conversations we'll be having very soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank
I
you.
couldn't agree more with all of the points that you made about the people that we have that are spending their time helping, as well as some of the less helpful contributions that we've had over the past week. Do any other members of the board have comments or committee reports they'd like to share at this time? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move into public participation. This is the opportunity for members of the public who have come to this meeting to speak about something that is not shown on tonight's agenda. Do I have anybody who'd like to come up and speak first? Mr. Nickerson.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, sir.
Nick Nickerson. I live in Brattleboro where the West River flows into the Connecticut. Have a little camp there with the Indians. I would like to offer a different drug paradigm to Tim's report. which is legalize drugs, tax and regulate it, making it safer. Use the tax money for drug rehabilitation, general education for adults, and individual training for skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that feedback. That was good. Other members of the public that might like to come up and speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Then we will move into our first item of business, which is magically becoming liquor commissioners. Do I have a motion to convene?
Water and sewer.
What? Where is
I
that?
don't have any liquor tonight.
Just water and sewer.
Oh,
We're liquor
just
free.
kidding. No fun for you. Water and sewer commissioners. Do I have a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners? So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's dive into that.
So this is the second review of the utility fund budget. 2 weeks ago, we went through it in detail. We're happy to go back into anything you may have an additional question about. I would summarize just very briefly for the public who may not have been listening last time, that we have a budget that is increasing in operating expenditures by less than 2%, by approximately $108,000. And there's also a 5-year, a 20-year capital improvement program that we've provided that shows not just the replacement of the equipment for the utility fund, but also the projects needed in order to keep our systems in good shape. So the one big variable there, of course, is the as yet not finally identified number for replacing our aged water treatment plant. But we are working actively on that, and we expect to be able to come back to the board and have public discussions around that in the fall regarding both the scale of the improvement that's needed for the water treatment facility and how that will affect rates. That, together with these operating expenses, how that will affect rates going forward into the future. So in the months of approximately October to January, we expect to have very thorough discussions of the utility fund in the longer term. And for tonight, what we're asking is that you approve the proposed FY20 utilities fund budget.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Peter. Is there discussion on the board?
Well, we definitely went through a few things last meeting, but you missed that.
I did.
Did anything
I would
come
like you to go
across?
through them all again
Point by point.
now.
Can I do just a quick
Because a
summary?
couple of the audience were not here as well, so maybe.
Not
we
point
should
by
review.
point, no. Quick
I
summary.
think the reason that there's probably not a lot of conversation is that we're not raising it this year, and all of those calculations require the information that Peter just talked about having, so that we can tell whether we have to continue to increase it year after year after year or not to pay for it.
Yeah.
So there's really not an awful lot to
Yeah.
That's actually a really important point that I left out, which is that the board already, prior to when we proposed this budget, had made the decision not to raise rates for this year because of a conversation we had about 6 weeks ago where we demonstrated that financially we didn't really need a rate increase at this time, and it would be conjecture to have had a rate increase that wasn't based on the actual costs of the program running forward. So it was a good year to take a pause, do the research that we're doing, have some further policy review in the fall, and then move forward with a new rate ordinance.
Great. I heard you breathe.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to point out this sentence here that says, overall, the only significant increases in operating expenses for this particular budget and for the whole town are the increases in costs for our health insurance program. And it's totally wonderful that town employees have great health benefits. And it's also a reminder of how messed up our healthcare system is, and it's having like an impact on town budgets. You know, and we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Other towns are experiencing this too. And I hope that as we move forward in the coming year and years, that we start to look seriously at some alternatives, because this current system is not working.
Thank you for that. Yeah, tangible evidence of a broken system right here in black and white in your select board binders.
year after year.
Any members of the public want to speak on the not raising of the rates this year or anything else related to this material? No from frauds. Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the FY20 utility fund budget as presented.
I will move to approve the FY20 utility fund budget as presented.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we need to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners. So I have a motion for that.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. We are no longer water and sewer commissioners. We are now just regular people that work on the select board. Moving into unfinished business, and our first item under that is the FY20 parking fund budget. Peter?
This will feel a lot like the last item in that we had a detailed review 2 weeks ago. And this evening, we're asking that you approve the proposed FY20 parking fund budget. Overall, the revenues are increasing projected actually to increase by 8%. The expenditures projected to increase by 12%. But as we said 2 weeks ago, the overarching factor in this year's parking fund budget is we have much less certainty this year than we have in most years because of all the changes we've made. We changed the rates, we changed out the equipment. Parking behavior is going to change. The amount of revenue we get per hour of parking has changed, and and some of our expenses have changed. The expenses actually are more readily definable than the exact amount of revenue we will receive over the course of the fiscal year. So this year it is much more of a estimate rather than a sort of a budget with a high level of confidence. But the good news there is that this is an enterprise fund. It functions on its own, separate and apart from town taxes. And there is a fund balance within the parking fund that we expect to be more than sufficient to cover any deviation from the budget as it's been proposed. So we recommend that you approve it this evening.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Is there conversation on the board about this item?
A little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You should kick us off then.
It's like the tiniest of things, really. There's this idea about signs that we would kick in 10 grand and the DBA would kick in 10 grand for some signs. And we don't really know much about these signs. I was wondering maybe if Patrick had any detail to share about what they might be.
Be happy to. So, as Peter noted, this is not seeking approval to move forward with a project.
Okay.
This is, and as Peter noted 2 weeks ago, this is not approval to move forward with a project. It's really conceptual at this point in time. Per the ordinance that established the downtown district and the downtown organization, they're to play a role in advising the town on parking-related matters. And one of the things that they have advised us about is the perceived inadequacy of the signage at the transportation center. It's very dry, it's very, thou shalt not, as opposed to you can do this. It's not terribly informative, it's not terribly colorful, it's not terribly pretty, it's not terribly a lot of different things. And so the concept here is for the town to commit a certain amount of resources. I believe we proposed 10,000. The DBA would endeavor to match those funds. If we combine those funds, we have $20,000. We'd look into a project to redesign some of the signage to be more friendly, to be more colorful, to be more welcoming, to be improved at the Brattleboro Transportation Center.
Okay.
And the actual project, I'm sorry, man.
Please do.
The actual project would move forward only if the select board indicates your approval as the details of it take shape. So at this time, it would be a placeholder budget item.
Okay. It's been a while since I bought signs, but it seems like a lot of money.
There's a context too, because we've had lots and lots of feedback that people go to pay at the park meters, and then they wonder where to go for whatever it is, and or where things are. And And so I think this is an attempt to
Okay.
respond to concerns for a number of years.
Well,
Yeah.
that raises the question, are these signs for parking throughout the downtown, or is it just within the transportation center?
Within the transportation center.
Oh, didn't know that, but still, yeah, that's an issue too.
It's a good start.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about this as ideas become more tangible. Wonderful. Anybody else have any comments on the parking fund topic?
I don't think so. I was going to just highlight that, this is a enterprise fund that helps us pay for some things that go beyond just paying for the infrastructure itself. So that I see it as kind of a positive thing in that way. Like the signage, if we do get improved signage, those are for people who aren't driving their cars or paying for parking. That's people who are biking in or taking the mass transit. And similarly, the upgrades to the Preston lot, which are included in this budget, are something with flower beds and compost that everybody's going to be able to enjoy. So
I do
just
enjoy a good compost.
I do.
Thank you for that, Liz. We are Brattleboroians after all,
I
so
enjoy it almost every
we have to
morning.
do.
Curbside compost. Don't get me started on curbside compost. But I just want to point that out. That's kind of a positive because we can be very focused on the numbers about, well, it's all this money that people have to pay because we raise the rates and everything. Right. We are getting some good benefit for everyone out of it, not just the people that are coming and parking with their cars.
Yeah.
Fair point, yes.
So I wasn't so much only concerned about the cost of the signs. It was more like whether or not out of this budget that was like a priority. And, in the conversations we've had about the transportation center, sometimes we've talked about the bathrooms. And I guess I kind of got to wondering whether 20 grand might be better spent on something that will, improve the bathroom situation. But I also don't imagine that 20 grand goes very far in the bathroom world.
No, it doesn't.
But I would at least like to entertain the possibility. And I don't want to be just thinking about it's this or this. Maybe it's both and, right?
We should always be exploring opportunities for people to use a bathroom when they're downtown,
Right.
honestly.
Yes.
So
Please.
let's make sure we're exploring those possibilities too. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Are there comments from the public about the parking fund, what it pays for, and the various things that have to do with parking in the downtown area? Not really like complaints though, just other items. Just kidding.
Not receiving complaints.
I'm not receiving complaints
Complaints are
tonight.
2 doors down. This is just
Down the
door that's
stairs,
locked, yeah.
to go through the door to the parking lot. No, I'm just kidding.
We love
Okay.
complaints. It's feedback.
And feedback is
Exactly.
a gift. Okay, so hearing no more comments from either the public or the board on this item, I would entertain a motion to approve the FY20 parking fund budget as presented. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Liz?
I make a motion to approve the FY20 parking fund budget as presented.
Excellent. Liz has made the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so our next item under unfinished business is my all-time favorite item, the annual goal setting for the Select Board for 2019 to 2020. Continued discussion and possible approval. All right, folks.
Here's what we've been pushing off because we didn't have you.
Well, now I'm feeling sick, so you might have to push it off again. Just kidding.
Were you following along at home?
I was in North Carolina.
But you
I did
read
not follow
minutes
along
and
from the
notes
cabana.
and all that kind of stuff,
I
right? You
missed
watched it on BCTV.
so much. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I watched it all. All right, so open it up to the board to begin discussing the goals. Where here? Should I read the goals, Peter?
Maybe Peter would like to give us an update of
I think that would make me happy.
changes since.
I'd be happy
Yeah,
to do that.
that'd be
So
great.
what's in front of you tonight is the same as what you initially looked at back on May 7th. with a couple of different changes that were presented first on May 21st and then held over to tonight so that the full board could look at them. The opioids crisis, about 2/3 of the way down the first page, maybe 3/4 of the way down the first page, there's two goals identified under a header of opioids crisis. That is to continue to support interagency efforts in the opiate crisis through active collaboration, raising awareness, and communicating effective strategies. And secondly, consider additional town funding for opioid-related initiatives with Groundworks and Turning Point. Those are discussed more fully in a memorandum dated May 13th from Chief Bukasi, Chief Fitzgerald, and Star Electronica that was included within the backup materials for May 21st and also for this evening's meeting. And that all arose out of suggestions that came from board members, both Liz and Daniel, and some discussion that occurred among the board members on May 7th. So that has been added from the way you first saw these. And then under energy efficiency and sustainability at the bottom of the page, the third of the three sustainability-related goals is to work with Southeastern Vermont Transportation to increase bus ridership, both by those who need the service and those who choose to use the service, by increasing the visibility, affordability, and frequency of bus service in Brattleboro. This also came from a suggestion that Liz made and followed some initial discussion by the board on May 7th.
These are great items that were added.
And I note that the discussion of the opioid led to a discussion to send the Project Care brochure to the public with a cover letter from the police department. So I would hope that in addition to voting on our overall goals, that we could vote on that and get it out the door.
Were you thinking of this as an opportunity for fundraising or just for general awareness, both which are great?
General awareness to the public
Yep.
so that they understand what Project Care is, understand the crisis that we're having,
Great.
and understand how they can participate on a person-to-person level or in general.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yep.
And in response to that discussion of the board, we had provided a cost estimate of $6,000 to do a mailing to every address in town as part of pursuit of the increasing awareness and communicating effective strategies elements of the select board's goal.
Excellent. Okay. Is there further discussion of any of these items on the board?
Yeah.
I appreciate the recap. Yeah, Daniel?
So the goal that I wrote originally was all about describing impacts, highlighting needs, and proposing solutions. And I really appreciate the time and effort that went into discussion amongst town staff and the memo that was written last week and not last week, last time out, and the conversation that we had here at the meeting. And the thing that I think is maybe lacking from the goal as it's written, so it's about supporting efforts through active collaboration, raising awareness, and communicating effective strategies. I wonder, out of those three things, which would highlight needs, right? Like, we might not have the effective strategy, but we might have recognized there's a need and we're currently not meeting it. And I would like to be able for us throughout this year to be able to say, hey, we're recognizing there's a need for this, and then we're going to need to figure out what are the strategies to work on that, and whether that's additional resources, whether it's different methods, I don't know. But I just kind of wonder about that.
Is there a specific change to the wording that is kind of calling to you? That would make it feel a little more tangible or in line with what you're thinking?
All right, let me edit on the fly.
Please do.
Yeah, so maybe raising awareness of the crisis and unmet needs.
Feeling like definitely the word unmet is something you're wanting to be in there, like
Right.
acknowledgement of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the second point, so it says consider additional town funding for initiatives with groundworks and Turning Point. And I was wondering whether we might consider adding the AIDS project to that, with the syringe exchange program currently being Tuesdays from, 10 until later on in the afternoon, once a week.
Yeah, there's all
And I
that.
know that they don't get all of their money from the town, but they are one of the organizations that receives some money through our human services budget.
That's true, and they are actually moving towards offering more than just that service in response to this epidemic, so.
I just, that makes me want to question point 2. Just, this is separate and apart from Project CARE, this request for,
Well, frankly, maybe Project CARE should also be listed in a comment.
That's what I was
those
gonna
organizations.
advocate for.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's intended to include Project CARE. So
Yeah, I
both of
think
those
that's-
organizations are actively involved with Project CARE. This
Right.
could
Yeah.
be additional funding for Project CARE and/or for other initiatives that are related to that work.
Do you
Then
think,
let's add Project CARE to that.
and then maybe do and/or other initiatives rather than locking it into just the AIDS project, although I do want to publicly acknowledge that I do appreciate them stepping up to the front lines. Not that they weren't always right there, but they've become more visible, for sure. David?
Couple others on that particular one. The first one about supporting interagency efforts and raising awareness. One of the things we might do concretely around that is to invite some of them to come in and talk about what they do and the effects that they're having and what are some of the successes and challenges. And aside from the raising public awareness, it might give us some ideas of how we might engage with them.
Hasn't the board had that pretty recently?
We did have
Sort of,
Chad Simmons from
yeah.
the Consortium
Consortium.
on Substance Abuse, which is an ongoing research project, and
Yeah.
they'll be reporting back to us again, I believe.
I know Daniel's original point was to have updates. Is that the similar thing you have in mind, or did you have something else in mind?
Well, so the nice thing about this goal setting process, right, is we're going to come back to these in July, October, and January.
Yeah.
So I had a more rigorous updating process, and also I'm well aware that people have jobs and they have got plenty to be getting on with. I would be happy with it as it stands, but adding in the language about unmet
Great.
needs.
I think having it as it's amended is good, but also I would throw out, just separate from setting the goals, that it might not be a bad idea to have members of those organizations that are listed in the goals come in before September, merely for the fact of if you could communicate, we'd like you to come in before September, and one thing we'd like you to speak on is your data, but also where you see missing pieces of funding that would corroborate with our
Specific to
to this
opioids.
goal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Sure, we
Before
can do
budget
that.
season.
Yep.
And the second one was around considering town funding. I was thinking again more concretely in terms of what kinds of in-source or in-kind contributions we could make. If there's, I know they're engaged in planning their new facility. They just got a significant grant, and things are going to be moving, I think, more quickly. But we have a lot of experience in communications and a lot of systems in communications that if we coordinated with them, that might save them some resources and also make it more effective. And then we can, we have the ability to paint signs and paint stripes in parking lots and things. There may be things that we could do with sort of in-kind contributions from the town. So I'd like us to explore that as well.
Nice. Any comments from the public on what we're talking about right now? Chief Fitzgerald, please approach the microphone. Thank you for all you do, sir.
You're welcome. I would just like the board to know that currently how the funding is set up through Project CARE, it goes through Turning Point. The police department does not solicit donations for what we do. If anyone would like to donate, we tell them to give it to Turning Point with a Project CARE memo in the memo line for Project CARE. That in turn, Turning Point, Susie Walker separates that money and it goes strictly for the Project CARE work. I don't know how that is going to play out and how you're going to do the funding, but that's how we do it. Currently, we've only got one very generous donation from the United Way for $2,000. We got that about maybe a year ago. And that is very quickly going away, mostly for transportation costs.
Yes, I've been trying to use it as much as possible.
Right, and you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
So it's mainly for transportation costs. So we got a lot of really good people working, a lot of really good volunteers, but they shouldn't have to spend money out of their pocket to do this. So that is the first thing I'd like to say. And the second thing is I was going to solicit guidance from the town manager for how to get Turning Point. They wanted to come to a select board meeting in August to really explain to the recovery side much better than we could. So that is already, I've already talked to them. They're going to come with a fully prepared presentation. I just didn't know the process on how to getting them on the agenda. So.
Perfect. If they could just connect with Peter and we'll figure out
Yeah,
exactly which
absolutely.
agenda and have it warned, that's exactly what I want to have
Okay,
happen.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
And let's not forget the 20th, which I mentioned, public forum. A really important thing, because a lot of these conversations, just for time and
Yeah.
energy, we
It is
can't
the
have them
20th.
all here. It's got to be a larger conversation. So the 20th,
What day of the week is that?
Thursday.
that's a
It's
Thursday after select board.
Yep. Okay.
I have a procedural question.
Yes, miss.
When and if we approve these goals, what do we have to do to approve the money for the letter to go out?
You would take a separate motion to
And can we do that
authorize
now?
that happen. Sure.
Yeah.
You can do that
Absolutely.
tonight or whenever you're ready.
Yep.
May I make one more comment? Unless there's other edits that the
In
board
general
wants
on
to-
the goals?
Yeah, I was going to make
Yeah.
Please do.
an overall summary because we focused in on the changes. I caused that, but I thought as you've been having the conversation about these items that changed, I thought it would be good just to alert the public to the other topics that are being addressed.
Please do.
Without reading each
Yeah,
goal,
yeah,
but
that's
just
fine.
the
I have some-
headlines.
Yeah, I have comments on all of them, which.
Oh, great. Then
Because we
I'll-
haven't gone through them yet, so go right ahead.
I'll wait if you have comments on each of the sections, then it'll become apparent to the public what the other topics are.
Okay, well, not everyone, but several of them.
Take it away, David.
Really, no, but that's it, okay.
That's you.
Well, the first goal about continue to support the legislature's passage of the self-governance pilot program, as everyone knows, the Senate passed that quite efficiently with a lot of support, and it got to the House, and there's a lot of other activity going on, and it got there kind of late, so for a number of reasons, it didn't move.
Right.
But the House is a very different place, and the chair of the committee is not our Senate, our representative. So I think it's going to be a much heavier lift to get enough representatives to support it, to actually get it through in this biennium. And I would like us to think about convening some sort of a conference or a regional informational opportunity for as many legislators as we could get to come, and try to recruit our legislators to encourage them to come and present it and do a little lobbying ahead of time and find out. But I'm sure the League of Cities and Towns has a pretty good idea of who's likely to support it and who's likely to resist it. And both of those things are really important, because you want to obviously line up your supporters, but you also want to be able to provide at least a moderating influence on the resistance to get things through the Vermont House. So I would like us to be just, we really didn't do much about this. Jeanette our senator was in a good position, and the League of Cities and Towns did their lobbying, and it was effective. But it doesn't appear to me that that's going to be as effective in the House, particularly with the scale of issues that the League of Cities and Towns has to work on with their lobbying staff. So I think if we want this to happen, and I think we do, I think we need to put some work into it and try and maybe it's contact other select boards. I don't know what it is really, but to strategize about really actively working between now and January before the legislature comes back, so that there's just this wave of support when people get back, and it gets some momentum.
Right, heard. Peter wrote it down.
Great. So now we can just figure out how to do it. So that's the first two. With the diversity, inclusion, equity, the first one about the new human resources professional conducting implicit bias training and other equity-focused training. I think the school district is quite like the combined school district, or if the court intervenes and we're still the Brattleboro School District, are quite likely to continue to put a lot of resources into that this coming year, maybe a lot of resources into it. And working together with them would make, particularly in identifying resources and planning trainings and measuring the effect and determining what the need is, and all those kinds of things that you want to do before you develop a program, I think would be really, really wise to explore. Outside of the context of the diverse workforce committee, which is doing good work, but not as explicit as what we have in mind here. And the other thing is there are a number of professionals and people in leadership positions in the community who we might want to also talk with about how do you what makes you want to live here, what makes this a decent place, how can you help us with the process of making this a more welcoming and more aware or more conscious community. So I just wanted to not just try and do it with our new person, but I can't imagine that that's what the approach would be, but I just wanted to be really, really clear about suggesting that we reach out broadly into the community and get a lot of people involved in the process of supporting her and of supporting that work. Because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of investment and a lot of really good people that are doing work at all different levels. And then the day work program, this has been a source of continuing frustration for me. A couple of documents ago in the past there was something about hoping to get something in place for this summer, and I hope we can do that, but it's close to summer. But the youth services is back to full staff strength, and I'm hoping we see some progress. And I think I'd like to kind of establish a date when, if it doesn't look like this is working out, that we consider new partners and a different approach. And I don't know that the missions of those organizations and the work they do keeps them from having to focus on something as explicit as this or not. But whatever it is, it's taking an awful long time for something that's been done in other places. There are models, and so I would like to see us make a greater effort to make sure that this gets done.
I want to comment about that, Dave. I think we have the right people in place, and it's a tricky business. Mm-hmm. So I would give them more time to get it done right, rather than, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been like this is the third year. I agree. I certainly are the right people, but for some reason there are difficulties that are presenting themselves that if it weren't regulated industry, state or municipal bodies or I can't think of the right word, agencies, but more like a church or another sort of a nonprofit that could be the sponsor, which is a model that's used in other places. It might move better.
I'm sure they're all clamoring to do it too.
Wow.
I'm sorry?
I think it's a difficult thing, and I don't know that anyone else is stepping up to the plate.
Well, we haven't reached out or invited people, as far as I know.
Can I just ask a clarification?
Yeah, sure.
Because currently it says continue, this is under diversity, inclusion, and equity in town government and the community. Number 3, continue efforts to develop a day work program to provide employment to people living at the margins of Brattleboro's economy. Is there something in that stated goal that is not inclusive of what you're talking about? Or are you advocating for getting a little bit more specific? I'm not sure. Because these are just goals, obviously. So we, as Daniel pointed out, we check in with them to make sure we're making some progress, or if we're not, we modify them. But I'm just curious on these points. Are you advocating for a rewrite, or are you just giving your own details for getting a little bit further with a microscope?
No, I'm not advocating for a rewrite or a microscope. This is a goal that we established, I think it was 2 years ago. It might have been 3.
Well, that's why it's here. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but if your goal is, if you have a goal in place and it's not being realized, then you have to look again at the method, reevaluate the method or the approach that you're taking. Simply having the goal phrased correctly is not going to make it come true. The process of realizing it, and that's what I'm questioning is, if this isn't working, should we consider another way?
I don't know if
It's the old, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you expect different results by doing the same thing over and over again. And that's the issue, the question.
Okay, so the goal remains the same.
Absolutely.
You're just questioning whether we're doing it in the right way.
It's not happening, so I'm questioning.
There's reasons why it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Absolutely. Yeah,
If we
no
set
question.
this goal, then at some subsequent point, there'll be a more formal discussion of it on our agenda. And I think that would be the time to evaluate
Yeah,
how
great.
well it's going.
Great.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's fine. That fits in with what I'm saying. I just want to make sure that we evaluate it in terms of, are we on the right path, rather than, well, so far it's being really tough.
And I do want to just, I'm not sure where I land on it, but I want to just air out the fact that we're not all convinced that this is a good thing for Brattleboro.
Okay?
And there are many reasons for that.
Yep.
So,
It's on the goals, so.
no, I understand, but I don't think you can just snap your fingers and have a great program, even if you think it's a great thing. But I think originally the goal was to really examine how it could work for our town. Right?
Yeah, I don't think you can snap your fingers and make it happen either.
And have we examined how it could work for our town and found some answers?
Yeah, it's,
We've found like literally how it works.
Peter can.
The main impediment is cost and insurance.
Right.
The main
I remember.
impediments are cost and insurance. Cost, depending on grants and our own commitment, we probably could, that's a hurdle we probably could get over just by deciding to. But the insurance has been an especially daunting challenge, and how to do proper documentation in order to facilitate the day work.
I see.
So I would definitely throw out there that to have insurance, they're going to want people to have maybe an ID or a social security card, and those
Yep.
things are not necessarily easy to obtain. I mean, there are people that do come, let's say, to the drop-in center and come in and look for laborers. So it's not like people aren't coming in and paying people to help them with their various projects on a fairly regular basis, but to actually formalize that process with insurance and taxes and with people who already are struggling to be documented, particularly around social security cards, which have become much harder to obtain, or much more creativity is needed in obtaining them. I think even if we were to find the money and set up the program and figure out the insurance, actually documenting the people that would most benefit from this program would be like the third daunting task, which is already something that's being undertaken by local organizations on the daily and already being found to be really challenging and frustrating. So that's yet one more hurdle, even if the program were to be set up logistically from the administrative perspective. So I hesitate on any kind of a drop dead date, because I think what happened when we dug into it is we realized it was much bigger than like Carol having one of her men pick, like, or women or humans that work for the town picking up somebody to come and break the leaves. Like
Right.
literally, once it became working for the town, then it became a whole documentation, HR,
Right.
insurance
Right.
nightmare, basically.
May I offer something that pulls us back?
Yes, please do.
Maybe not to 30,000 feet, but maybe to 10.
Yes.
You're in a process of establishing your annual goals, so you're working through with each other and stating to the community the things that you think are the highest priority to work on throughout the year. And it explicitly doesn't mean that we won't work on other things. We all know we will. It also doesn't mean we're going to accomplish every one of these, but you're setting a target. Dave's quite rightly pointed out that some of these roll over from year to year because we
Yeah.
haven't achieved them, but you decide they're still important, so they stay on the list. I urge you to be cautious about trying to identify the solutions in this conversation rather than just the targets, because there's 20 separate items in 8 separate categories. It's a body of work we won't complete fully, but
as many
we'll
goals.
complete an important critical mass of it. But that work to accomplish those things will happen throughout the year. And tonight, it would be good if you could kind of hone in on things you think shouldn't be on the list that are currently on it, or something that you think is missing, or something that you think needs to be reworded because it doesn't adequately emphasize what you want to accomplish.
I feel like this is what happens when Tim gets to chair meetings, is that we end up with 20 goals in 8 categories. No, I'm just kidding, Tim.
Actually, I was trying to say what
Actually, I
Peter
think they're
just
very
said.
pointed.
I was
They're
trying
good
to point
goals.
out that if we get too far into details, it doesn't become goals. It becomes a discussion of
Yeah,
the goal, and that's
for later times.
big
I just
for
want
this.
to point out that what I said initially was that we've been at this is our 3rd year, as far as to the best of my memory, and we're not there. And I think that we need to get there. This was it may be less important, or the obstacles may be more vivid to this board than the board that originally put this on here.
think
But it was
so.
recognized as one of the things that we could do that actually has the effect of helping people get themselves on their feet and have an option to not to whatever things that they're not doing or they're doing at this point. And it was a real concrete effort. And what I'm pointing out is that we haven't made adequate progress in my mind. And there are obstacles. That's the first I've heard is explicitly said, well, it's really this insurance and the money issue. And if we'd heard that during budget time, I would have proposed that we put that money in the budget. And I will this year, because I think this is really crucial to get done. I think it's a really crucial service. And it's tough to work out, but I think we have to do it. It's very concrete. And we can continue to talk about whether we believe that. And during the budget process and the town meeting, we could take it up as well. But at this point, it's on our goals, and we're not getting there. And I would like us to redouble our efforts to get there.
Can I ask a newbie question? I feel like when I've seen the meetings where there's a review of the goals, comes pretty late in the agenda. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
That is accurate.
Yeah. And I wonder if maybe we can be intentional about when we're reviewing goals that we put it early enough in the agenda so that we have the energy and
Brains.
the brains to actually really review them. I mean, I know there's a lot. We probably can't go through every single one in detail, but, you know.
Where's it going to land? Under unfinished business all the time, right? Or does it roll into new business?
Yeah, it appears each time it pops up for a quarterly update, it falls into new business. The reason why you see it come late, and you'll see that generally, like your appointments to committees and boards is always near the end as well. The structure is intended to accommodate folks who are coming from the community for an item before we do our sort of internal town business.
I see.
And so
Gotcha.
that's why the goals have always come late. I'm not suggesting that the goals always need to come late, or that even that general principle needs to continue to apply, but that's how we've tried to structure the agendas over the years.
Okay.
Does it have to land under new business? Because it's kind of unfinished, isn't it? This is like, you don't have to, we could take that offline,
Sort of the
really.
quintessential unfinished business, but typically what you would do is each time, just in the proper organization of an agenda, you'd have the first time that an item's appearing be new business, and then if you defer it,
Then
because
it's
you didn't finish the
unfinished.
conversation, it would show up the next time on unfinished.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that show up under new business that are projects that are unfinished, but the piece of business is new to select board action.
Thank you for that. Is there?
2 more.
All right, Dave.
Well, these are our goals. We waited a month or more to talk about them. So
Go for it.
under the sustainability officer, I understand that the Energy Committee has got a separate committee, and the Energy Committee, and working with Peter to come up with a description of that. And I wanted to ask that we get, and maybe it would be in our July update, since it's not very far away, but we're only meeting once in July, and I may not be here, so that might not work. But for us to get an early look at that, in case it's going off in a direction that is not what we had in mind.
Actually, it's a pretty mature process already at this point, and I would expect that in the middle of the summer, whether that'll be July 9th or whether it'll be August 6th, I would expect that one of those meetings you'd likely see the whole item,
Right.
and be able to decide whether you like it or whether you want some reworking.
Right.
How's that
Yeah,
sound?
my concern is one of the things I was told about the process by the people in it is that it's been difficult to get a broad range of input or input from a broad range of our demographic in the community. And I would like to know that what's happening in that sense, who's been included in the process and how broad the representation is.
Sure.
Because this is a broad concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The citizens group, there is a group of active citizens that is an informal gathering.
Right.
They're not, there's no
It's
structure
not a town committee, yeah.
to it, right? And, but they've been really diligently working through a process of getting a couple of different documents ready to bring to you to have express a community vision for the position. Meanwhile, we're doing some work internally around what it would look like in terms of how it would fit into our organizational structure and operate within town government. And we expect together to present to you in the middle of the summer.
Great.
That's great.
Yeah. I thought so, because that's when the job opens up. I just would like it to, maybe get a draft or some information about what's being considered.
Sure.
This doesn't all have to happen. I would rather not do this with their proposal. I'd rather have it ahead of time and be able to think through and get some questions answered rather than have to ask everyone.
Sure.
And the other,
Maybe you and I can talk offline,
Sure.
and I think actually benefit from talking directly with the citizens, because I'm interacting with them, but they're doing their own thing.
right, yeah, and
And we're doing our
I've been seeing the
administrative
minutes too.
piece of it as well.
Yeah. And the last one is actually the last one, the public outreach about updating, improving the town's website. Wondering if there's a way that we could I'm not sure who we would survey or how we could survey, or if there's a way to trace it electronically on the site, but what kinds of things are people coming and looking for?
You can trace that.
Yeah, great. And just to use that to guide it. And then we haven't really talked about what we want the website to be able to do, what kinds of, what we want to feature, how we want to have it. So we might want to, typically organizations do that before they make significant changes to the websites. So those are my questions and concerns.
Great, thank you, David. Are there further comments on the board about the goals?
No. Well, I don't think so. I think we covered, my concern was getting Project CARE mentioned during that one, and
Yep.
whatever you guys thought as well, the AIDS project thing, and others.
And others, yeah.
But that was my main concern.
Great.
And to reiterate that these, if it doesn't appear on this page, doesn't mean it's not going to get done.
Great clarifying point.
We do lots of things that don't
We
appear on our
do.
goals. So.
Further comments, or any comments besides Chief Fitzgerald, who already spoke? Any other comments? Okay. So it looks like we're going to need two motions.
I'm sorry, do you want me to identify what has been proposed to change?
I think if you wanted to recap that
Okay.
before we make a motion, I think that's prudent.
Okay, so there was quite a bit of discussion about different items, but at least in my notes, I want to make sure that it's what the five of you intend. The only changes that were actually made to the wording of the items are in the two opioids items. And they would now read this way. Number one would say, continue to support interagency efforts in the opiate crisis through active collaboration, raising awareness of unmet needs, and communicating effective strategies.
Great.
And the second one would read, consider additional town funding for Project CARE and other opioid-related initiatives with Groundworks, Turning Point, and the AIDS Project of Windham County.
Okay.
I think it's the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont.
Of Southern Vermont? Okay, sorry.
Did I mention Project CARE?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, it was the first, it's now the first thing mentioned.
That threw me off. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. So let's vote on that, and then Peter, if you could walk us through wording after we've approved potentially these goals, if you could walk through wording for
Sure.
Liz for our next
Yep.
motion. Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve our select board goals for 2019-2020 as modified. The modifications are to text regarding the section that speaks to opiates, and Peter has just read those on the public record. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure.
Yes. You keep, never mind.
Go right ahead.
I have a feeling you're changing up the way we traditionally do it, and
What do
that's
you
quite
mean?
all right. Do you want me to reread what you just said?
Yes. No, I don't. I'm doing it my way.
So moved.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye. All right.
I said I would entertain a motion, didn't I?
It's more efficient, right?
Maybe it is, yeah.
It is.
Good. Okay, so now we're going to
mailing?
discuss the mailing, yes, and the right motion for that.
So I believe that the motion that Liz wants to make, and at least my understanding of what the project is that you'd like us to undertake, would be to authorize staff to expend an amount not to exceed $6,000 to distribute town-wide, to mail to all addresses in town, the Project Care brochure, accompanied by a cover letter from Chief Fitzgerald.
That is.
Okay.
Excellent. Do you so make that motion?
I so move.
Wonderful. Liz has made a motion to approve funding to mail out the Project Care flyer with an attached cover memo from Chief Fitzgerald to all mailing addresses within the town of Brattleboro. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Any opposed? Better not be. Okay, great. Motion carries.
But okay with you? Should have checked in.
Gets it right.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
They've all got to be handwritten.
At least you were in the room. I mean, that's at least something when you're assigned work. Okay. Excellent. So we are still under new business, and we are moving on to the parade permit for Brattleboro Goes Forth, because we are already moving on to that part of the year.
Indeed we are.
Okay, Peter.
So the staff has reviewed this. It is, the plans for the parade are the same as you're used to from the traditional parade we've had for many years. And we are asking that the select board formally approve this evening the permit for the parade to be held on July 4th. And we also encourage all select board members who are going to be in town that day to march as a unit.
And it's fun.
It's fun.
Is that a
It
warmed
is fun. The
meeting?
kids love it.
That's happened in the past. It's a lot of fun.
You can carry the select board banner, or you can make up your own fun sign, which is what I did.
We have a banner that
Yeah.
identifies
I
you as the
wasn't
Brattleboro
told.
Select Board.
It's very fun and a little bit hot.
Some of us do it every year.
Some of us do it every year.
That's right. I'm going to leave that up there. Just let it.
That's great. Good public shaming for it. Excellent. Is there a conversation on the board?
I would like to thank Kevin O'Connor and the O'Connor family for their continued organization and support of this event.
Excellent. Wonderful point. Thank you very much to Kevin and the O'Connor family for the year after year enjoyment that we get to have on the 4th of July. Are there comments in the public about the 4th of July parade permit that we potentially might approve in the next 30 seconds? Okay.
Or 20 even.
So if not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Oh. Aren't you cute? Yes.
Well,
Jump right in there,
approve-
Russell.
I'll make a motion to
He's going to
approve a
transition
parade
to the
permit
new demotion here.
for the
Activity.
By the People Brattleboro Goes Forth parade on July 4th, 2019.
Excellent. Tim made a motion to approve the parade permit for the By the People Brattleboro Goes Forth parade on July 4th, 2019. All those in favor? Aye.
None.
Any opposed? No. All right, moving on to my least favorite topic on the agenda. It is the annual dog warrant.
Man.
Please do.
So the town administers the local portion of a program that applies statewide for dogs to be registered. Part of the registration process, or licensed, I should say, part of the licensing process is to prove that dogs have been vaccinated for rabies and other diseases. So it's an important public health matter, and this is actually a really good example. We talk here not infrequently about Dillon's rule and home rule, self-governance. This is a really good example of Dillon's rule down into the weeds, where the state is very precise about what is required in the dog licensing program and what can be charged for the fee for a dog license, and how the enforcement occurs when someone doesn't license their dog. And because of that, One of the steps in this process, so the deadline for people to relicense their dogs for each year is April 1st. That has come and gone. The people that are on the list this evening with their dogs have received multiple notices from the town reminding them that they're overdue and they need to pay. They have not yet paid. And so now enforcement, field enforcement begins. Part of that under the state statute could, in an extreme situation, include a penalty up to and including euthanizing the dog. That always has caused a lot of consternation, and this matter comes before the select board. We've assured you every year, your predecessors every year, and we are pleased to assure you this evening that the town has never euthanized a dog, and the town never will euthanize a dog, but we're required to use the state specified language in your adoption of the warrant that allows us to go out and in a gentler manner enforce the requirement that people license their dogs.
Thank you for that, Peter. As an avid dog lover, I loathe the verbiage that the state forces us via Dylan's rule to read at this meeting every year.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't understand this column that says expires. What does that mean if it's,
We're
well
pretty
into the
sure.
future?
We were actually asked that question just before the meeting. We're not 100% sure, but we're about 99% sure that that's the expiration of the rabies vaccination.
Not the dog.
Because of some of these are actually a couple of years out, and the rabies vaccination is usually for 3 years, we think that that's likely the answer to that question.
So this is primarily a public health matter.
It's entirely a public health
And
matter.
so I can very well support that.
Great. Any further comments on the board about this?
So if folks don't license their dog, now what happens?
I think they get a fee.
They get a fine.
Oh.
Yeah, there's an additional financial penalty once they are brought into compliance. Yeah, Chief?
The process usually consists of, the town clerk will send out 2 notices, and if you're on this list, you've already received 2 notices. Our animal control officer, Kathy Burrows, will now try to contact first by phone to find out certain, things change within households. They may no longer have the animal, they may have just forgot or whatever, everything like that. So it's done very compassionately. Kathy does a really great job. She calls
Yes,
them
she
up,
does.
basically says, hey, your dog needs to get registered. Do you still have the dog? And
This one.
she does it very, very well. And once she goes through the list, she will go back and then give you a warning. And then she'll start issuing a ticket where you would pay a financial fine. But it very rarely, I can honestly say, it's a 10-page list, and it looks daunting, and it is. It's time-consuming for her throughout the week, but very rarely towards the end. There's literally just a handful of people that we reach to that, habitual, repetitive writing a ticket to. Very, very. I spoke with her this afternoon about this because I figured there'd be some questions on that, especially the euthanasian part. But it's a very compassionate how she handles it, and I feel comfortable that by the time you start paying some money, you've been fairly warned quite a few times.
Thank you for that. Kathy is a good example of how lucky we are to have compassionate staff that work so hard with our community members to help them get where they need to be. Is there further discussion on this? Okay. Hearing none. I would entertain a motion to approve the annual dog warrant as presented.
Move we approve the annual dog warrant as presented.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So our next item is, thank you very much, the award contract for the downtown design plan. And with us tonight, we have Sue Fillion, our planning director. Hi, Sue. To come to our fancy table.
It's not that fancy.
Stop it. It's fancy if I say it's fancy, okay? I have low standards. Hi, Sue.
Hello. So I wanted to come tonight in case you had any questions. We received the municipal planning grant back in December, and we put out an RFP. We had a good response. We interviewed 3 firms, and the panel chose PlaceSense as the firm to do the downtown design plan. PlaceSense has worked for the town before. They did the land use regulations and a Route 30 corridor study. PlaceSense is a single-person firm, and they have formed a team, a multidisciplinary team with a stormwater engineer, some architects, and then there's some people who will focus on the public outreach who had been involved with the Brattleboro Listening Project. So we're pretty excited.
Yeah.
This plan, I know that there were some questions at previous meetings, what it might include. So what we're really doing is focusing on the public realm, and, you know, we don't really know what developments are going to come into downtown. So we really want to focus on what are the kind of small but impactful ways that we can improve downtown with placemaking, with improving bike and pedestrian connections, and looking at opportunities for green stormwater infrastructure. We know we have some stormwater issues in the downtown, so are there places that we can use green stormwater infrastructure to kind of mimic the natural environment, absorb stormwater rather than just piping it into the brooks, because then you have cleaner water as well. So those are some of the focuses. We'll be looking at the Depot Street area and Bridge Street, because one of the big developments we know that will be happening is the Hinsdale Bridge being moved. So how does that change Bridge Street with less traffic? Are there some opportunities there, especially if there's going to be bike and pedestrian bridges down there? We liked their proposal the best. Because we thought it was fun, and they really focused on having inclusive engagement. They kind of identified a couple of key stakeholders in the downtown: the businesses, the residents, advocacy groups, and art. So we'll be addressing public art in it, and maybe where there can be some installations. And then it's also going to be fun. So we're going to have a better block challenge in the summer, where we're going to work with community groups, hopefully build some excitement for them to test out some placemaking ideas. So we're pretty excited. I think we expect the plan late in 2019. And that would be a plan that the Planning Commission would then recommend to the Select Board for adoption.
This sounds really exciting. I can't wait to keep watching this.
Sounds like a really thorough proposal.
Yeah.
Did PlaceSense come out on top in the points process?
Yeah,
It's good when that happens.
they did. Well, I would say, so there were five of us that reviewed. I would say for 4 of us, they did come on top, but I think for somebody else, they were tied for first. So, yeah. We had great options, I have to say.
Brandy?
Yes, please.
I just want to comment that I'm very familiar with PlaceSense's work and also recommend it highly. And I also have great respect for your review process and the members of the Planning Commission who reviewed all the proposals. Thank you.
I did my homework and I read the Vermont Downtown Action Team report of 2014 and noticed in there some interesting things, in particular talking about like the extension of the West River Trail and, you know, thinking about how we can use our waterfront in a way that like might actually be fun. And I also have been thinking a fair amount recently about like our use of, well, our public space and how for a, you know, professed kind of rural place, we actually have very little green space in our downtown. And I found an old picture of Pliny Park from the year 2000, where like there were people hanging out there and it was like green and pleasant. And I would hope that as part of this process, you know, we can take a look at our public space and imagine what it might be like to have a downtown where there are more opportunities for folks to hang out without having to spend money, in a place that's pleasant and comfortable and maybe even green.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it with the placemaking and
Yeah.
Great.
yeah, places for people.
I'm glad to hear
All
that
users.
because that's really important to me too.
It's back when it was Donut Park.
Yeah.
I would kill for a donut right now.
Same donuts.
Same donuts. Any further comments from the public about this really exciting?
Can I ask
Yeah.
a dumb question with your permission?
Oh, please do.
I'm never afraid to ask those. What's a charrette?
So a charrette is kind of an
Did I
iterative
say it right?
design. You did. It's an iterative design process where you will have like the professionals will be there and they'll be taking feedback and they'll be doing drawings and the public might come back and give feedback and they might tweak them again.
So an
If you
interactive meeting?
Yeah, if you were around and saw any of the work that was done on the Whetstone in 2016, that was a charrette. And actually, Place Sense will be doing a charrette with this. It might be a little bit different, but there'll be a 3-day charrette probably at some point in September.
Cool.
Nice. Thank you.
That was a good question. Mr. Franz?
Audience.
Just wondering if this is an appropriate time to ask about the Whetstone Path plans and whether what you're doing or talking about now interacts with that in some way.
I think it will interact with this. I mean, there's been no further movement on that at this point.
Yeah.
Yes. I should say, I mean, we have been talking with, about exploring a couple of different grant opportunities that will come up later in the fall to help move that and other trails connections to the downtown forward.
Great. Well, I'm really excited about this.
Me too.
Yeah. If there's no further comments, we are going to be needing a motion to go ahead and authorize Town Manager Peter Elwell to enter into the contract with Place Sense. So I would entertain a motion for that.
I got you. I move that we authorize Town Manager Peter Elwell to enter into a contract in the amount of $40,100 with Place Sense of Windsor, Vermont for preparation of a downtown design plan.
Excellent. Daniel has made a motion authorizing Peter Elwell to enter into a contract in the amount of $40,100 with Place Sense for preparation of the downtown design plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Any opposed? It'd be crazy.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Carries. Thanks, Sue. Have a good rest of your night. Thank you. Okay. Whew, now we move on to even more exciting items like the collective bargaining agreement. Let me see, make sure I read this right. With International Union of Operating Engineers Local 98.
Yes,
Take it
so
away.
there are, the next 3 items all relate to employee compensation, and in the case of the 2 collective bargaining agreements, to more broadly the relationship between groups of employees in the town and the town government. And I'm happy to report that we've had very amicable negotiations. There's a really healthy atmosphere. Each of the agreements is expiring. We have 4 unions in the town. All 4 of those agreements are expiring as of June 30th of this year. And so earlier in the winter, we began negotiations. 2 of those are finished and have been approved by the employees and are in front of you this evening for approval. I will say, for the benefit of the public, the Select Board has been very involved in this process throughout. It's one of the reasons why you see us go into executive session when we say we're going to discuss collective bargaining agreements with employees, is to make sure that as staff is negotiating these agreements with the unions, that we're doing so in a manner that is acceptable to the board, so that we don't go through all of that process and then land here and run into a concern or a problem. So what's before you this evening is very familiar to you. On behalf of the public, I'll just summarize that there are a number of different changes being made to each of the agreements that relate more to operations and different aspects of scheduling and other kinds of consideration like that. Each of them has been online. Each of the proposed agreements that will be voted on here in a moment has been online since last Friday, and will be available for public inspection if anybody wants to view them. Once they're no longer on the website, people can certainly contact our office and have a look at this. So we want folks to know that there is more going on in these than just compensation. But of course, changes in compensation is one of the most important matters, both to the employees and the town. And in these agreements, the Local 98 is the administrative employees union. So that cuts across all the different town departments for the employees who perform mainly office functions. Those employees are the only ones among the four groups of unionized employees that don't have a step system as part of their pay structure. So as they proceed through their career, the raises that they receive are the across-the-board raises that are granted by the town. And so in the collective bargaining agreement that's been negotiated with Local 98, each of the 3 years, on July 1st of each of the 3 years, it would be a 3% increase for those employees because of the fact that they don't receive step increases. The period, I should say, the period of the agreements is a 3-year agreement in both cases, beginning on July 1st this year, 2019, and continuing through June 30th of 2022. And then in the firefighters agreement, which is the other one that's before you tonight, there is a step system for the firefighters, and the raises that are included within the updated firefighters contract are 2.3% in FY19, and then, I'm sorry, FY20, in the July 1st, 2019 raise, and then 2% in each of the succeeding years. And again, there are other changes in each of the two agreements that relate to other aspects of the employment relationship. And those, in some cases, were addressing sections that the town wanted to see updated, and in other cases, sections that the union wanted to see updated. And in actually quite a substantial number of cases, our interests were overlapping. Each party came to the table in our initial discussions and recognized that just based on things that had changed over the passage of time, that we should update a section together. So again, we met for each of these two contracts, we met 4 times separately with each of the 2 unions and had really productive collaborative negotiations this time around. So it's been a really good process. We recommend that you approve both agreements.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Board members want to discuss these agreements? I mean, I'm really glad that they went very well, and I appreciate the work that our town employees do, because we ask a lot in this town of our town staff. And I think we always get superior service and work in response to the big ask that we give in Brattleboro.
I also wanted to comment that it seems like a very fair and process.
Yeah, I just want to say I was totally pleased with how it went, and thanks again to Patrick and yourself and all your support staff for making it go smoothly, helping it to go smoothly.
I concur. Just to follow up with what Brandy said, at the awards, the firefighters awards ceremony, the chief reads off some of the really specific things that people did over the course of the year. It's striking. It really is.
Okay. Any discussion from the members of the public? Franz?
Franz Reichsman, Finance Committee. I would like to hear from the board or administration as to why this is the right process to go through with regards to this set of financial decisions. To me, this is the most consequential single financial decision that the Select Board makes. Because, I say that because every year at town meeting we hear that, oh, well, the biggest expense in the budget is salaries and benefits, and those have already been determined through contract negotiations. And the town meeting representatives really have no way to participate or even have a window into how this is occurring. I have no idea what went on in those negotiations. It's easy to glance at some numbers and say, oh, that seems fair. So I'm not really complaining, but I just wonder why this is the right process and what alternatives there might be, and why those alternatives aren't used instead.
I think that's a good question to bring up in a public
Thank you.
setting. Peter, do you have an answer to that?
Did you want to?
I don't have an answer. You know, I would imagine, you know, I might defer to you in a moment. I'm going to go down the road anyway, and then I'll walk it back.
Sure.
Unions, right? Unions exist and are fighting for the rights of their members, right? And the town is trying to do a good job by the town. And if we did all of that stuff in public at these meetings, that sounds to me to be pretty unwieldy and pretty messy, and I wouldn't fancy it. And I would kind of push back a little bit, like when you were a doctor employed at a hospital. I don't know if you would have wanted your kind of stuff out in the open like that as well. And I don't know, just I was a union employee for a time, and I appreciated all the work that union staff did and our union reps, and we, yeah, I don't know. So I'll walk it back.
Well, I'll say that I think that just as our excellent employees have excellent unions who have representatives, we are our town's taxpayers' representatives. And so we have to be negotiating in good faith and then also on a level playing field. So to have, as you said, everything not only to be unwieldy, but it would also make it impossible to kind of reach for more on their side and us to give a little bit more if the entire process was broken open, I think.
David?
Yeah, there is another model of open negotiations, of collaborative negotiations done in public, and it's been successful in a variety of applications. That when people sit down to negotiate, one of the first things, there are a series of ground rules, and the first one is they typically agree to confidentiality, that everything that happens remains as if it were an executive session. And if the two sides want to do it differently, then they certainly could. But typically, that hasn't become very popular. It's been successful in a lot of places, but it's not widely agreed to.
Peter?
Thank you. I think the most important reason why this is a better system, and in my opinion, my strong opinion is that this is a better system. The most important reason why is because it's not just about how much money people get paid or what the schedule is or what process you have to go through to request time off or those sorts of things that are all embedded in here about the different work rules and the aspects of the relationship. It's actually what it represents when it's being done well is the maintenance of harmonious relations between the group of folks who are performing the services and the people who are responsible for overseeing that work. And that can be hard to do when you've got something gnarly to work through together if you have to do it in public. You might think about a parallel situation of a family that's bumped into something that is a painful disagreement between people who really care a lot about each other and who are going through life together. And if they have to sort that out in front of an audience, that's got an entirely different set of ramifications to it than them sorting it out for themselves and then coming out and saying, this is how we worked it out, we're good. So notwithstanding the fact that this has implications that family decisions don't have because of the impact to the taxpayers, the outcomes are completely transparent. The reason why we publish, strike out, and underline copies of the contracts is so that everyone in town who cares to look can see how the new contract is different from the one that is expiring. Mm-hmm. We think that's really important that people be able to see that level of detail in the outcome. But it's the confidentiality of the process enables the sort of frank exchange that is sometimes necessary. I'll tell you, actually, this time around, it was really a a really comfortable, truly completely collaborative, as opposed to the kind of collaboration that involves, resolving tough differences. We've had those too. This time around with these two units, it wasn't like that. We sat down and identified the things we wanted to work on. We worked on them together. We came to good outcomes together. And the fact that we were able to do that without a spotlight or people taking political positions about it, in the process, is really useful. And I guess the one other thing I would say, and I saved it for last because it might be the least relevant, but I think it actually might not, is just my own personal experience with this. So, most everybody knows I spent a long time being a town manager in Florida, and Florida's law doesn't allow you to negotiate in private. And so I've negotiated collective bargaining agreements in public meetings, sitting in settings like this. And I'm glad to know that you've seen some successful outcomes. They were almost every time a disaster there, because they become very politicized very quickly. And the emphasis isn't on harmonious relations and effective teamwork. It's on, who wins in the outcome. And that's a tough way to do this piece of business.
Franz?
Well, I wasn't really thinking of the Real Housewives of New Jersey model, which
I beg
certainly
your
could be
pardon.
awkward. Sorry?
Can you
Don't
say what
diss
that
New
means?
Jersey.
It's sort of negotiating things out in front of family and public kind of.
Reality TV.
Yeah, reality TV things.
That kind of reality, yeah.
Sorry you haven't been able to stay caught up with that.
And,
But I was thinking more of some kind of hybrid. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that this information, the contracts, has only been publicly available since Friday. Is
That's
that correct? I mean, that's a pretty short window. I looked at them on Friday. I had a couple other things to do over the weekend. But, I don't think there was a really good opportunity for public feedback on any of this. So I can certainly understand why negotiations might take place in a closed setting. But it seems to me maybe there could be some, leaks from time to time, or some kind of controlled summaries that are published, or, even if it doesn't come out to the end, some kind of real effort to elicit comment from people in the public who might want to take a look at it. I don't think that's been the case this time. Thank you.
That's good feedback. I'm glad you asked that question in public, and I appreciate everybody weighing in. And I think it's good to ask questions like that in public, because generally people aren't one person wondering one thing. So when you spoke a minute ago, you said that you recommended approval of both items D and E. Does that mean that we should be doing a...
You could, but it would probably be more appropriate to take the extra 2 minutes and adopt each one separately.
Okay, great.
Approve-
Just wanted to
approve
make
each
sure
one
we
separately.
weren't trying to do that. Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the intentional union of Operating Engineers Local 98 for the period of July 1 through June 30, 2022.
I so move,
Excellent.
with the exception of the fact that it's the International Union.
What did I say?
Intentional.
Well,
I'm
I
sure
really
that they
do
were
enjoy
intentional
the
as
word
well.
intentional,
Yes.
but you are correct. It is international. Thank you for that
Really
correction.
close. There's only one letter difference.
I know. All those in favor?
Well,
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we'll go directly to, I would entertain a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the Brattleboro Professional Firefighters Association for that same period, which is July 1 of 2019 through June 30 of 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve a collective bargaining agreement with the Brattleboro Professional Firefighters Association for the period from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022.
Now I see how I've been doing it differently tonight.
Yes.
Just saw that. I have to think about which one I like best. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we move on to pay increase for non-union employees. Would you like to speak to that, Peter?
Yes, please. So there are about 20 employees in the town who are not members of any of the 4 unions. Those include the members of the senior management team, a couple of confidential employees, and part-time, regular part-time employees. So people who are employed regularly throughout the year, but work for less than 20 hours per week or less for the town. And so for that group of employees, there isn't a collective bargaining agreement that addresses wages. That's an action that the board takes each year at this time to decide what the pay increase will be for the upcoming fiscal year. I'm recommending this evening that the pay increase effective July 1st of 2019 for the non-union employees be 2%.
Excellent, thank you, Peter. Is there conversation on the board about pay increase for non-union employees?
I think it's a fair and good act.
I completely agree.
Ditto.
You'll see how I feel when I vote.
David, anything you want to add to
No, it's all
that
been said.
suspenseful?
We go to commercial and then when you come back.
Are there members of the public that would like to speak on the pay increase that is proposed for the non-union employees of the town? Okay, hearing no further comments, I would entertain a motion for the 2% pay increase for non-union employees of the town. That increase is effective in July.
I move we approve a 2% pay increase for all non-union employees effective July 1st, 2019.
All right, everybody watch Daniel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh! Any opposed?
you know.
Motion carries. Excellent. Okay, we are moving right along now, and our next item is town committees and board appointments, of which we have many people on our list for various things. I don't really remember how we do this part. Do we just pick people that we read off? Tim can read them.
Tonight, there are actually no situations where you need to do a balloting to pick from. There's no committee for which there are more candidates than seats.
Okay.
So I think you could have someone, which I'd be willing to do, or one of you could do it, read off the names of the committees, the seats available, and the names of the people who have applied to be appointed, and then take as a motion to approve the slate. Do you have any concern about that, Jen?
No, it's usually by nomination, but motion works. Also.
Yeah, I'm
Excellent.
thinking that, the nomination process, committee by committee, would be kind of tedious and unnecessary tonight.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that you don't have competition for these seats.
Okay, great. Is there a board member that's super excited about reading down this list? And it would be reading the committee and the person appointed to that committee and any term expirations that are applicable.
I could manage it.
There's a stare down going over here,
it's fine.
but
David's
David's
got
taking it away. Woo! Okay.
Strike quickly.
Knock yourself out, Dave.
So for the ADA Advisory Committee, term expiring in June 21, Julie Tamler. Terms expiring in June 20th, Carmen Nina Wilson, Mary McLaughlin, and Gary Stroud. For the Cemetery Committee, Brian Bannon. For the Citizens Police Communications Committee, Gary Stroud. The Development Review Board, Nora Dissinger and Michael Averill. For Fence Viewer, Tim Kipp. Honor Roll, Sherwood Lake Senior and E. David Wright. For the Recreation and Parks Board, Bethany Ranquist. Rescue Incorporated Tech Trustee is Deborah Miller Chapman. Senior Solutions, Pam Sweeney. Traffic Safety Committee, the Citizen Rep is Louise Zack. School Rep is Alice Sharks. Tree Advisory Committee, Tim Kipp. And Weir of Coal, David Levenbach, who left and went home.
Oh, is that who that was?
Yeah,
Oh,
he missed his moment.
Is there discussion?
of course.
I just want to give a shout out to David Levenbach, who possibly answered one of the questions in the best way ever.
Yeah.
And this is a partial response I'll read. So the question is, why are you interested in this position and what particular skills would you bring to the organization? This is for Weir of Coal. And David responded in part, I am well recognized for my ability to handle tasks for which no level of responsibility is expected.
I have now stolen that slogan and I'm putting it everywhere where I do anything.
I'm
So,
seeing
thank
if
you,
it's
David.
going to fit under my name tag, like right under vice chair.
It was
No.
I think
fantastic.
that the responsibility for a carbon-rich resource like coal would be pretty,
It was the best
Pretty
response
heavy.
I've ever read. So
pretty
people who are applying for committees, step it up with those responses because you've got a hard one to beat. Okay. Great. Any further comments?
Well, it was nice to see so many folks stepping up, right?
Yes, it
And,
was.
and maybe there are also more vacancies to be filled?
Always.
All right.
Always,
We need
always
more
so
people.
many.
I would like to thank my sister-in-law
I wondered.
volunteering for the ADA committee.
Thanks, Mary. Good. Okay.
So do we have a vote on those?
Yeah, we'll,
Yes, we're going to do that now. I would entertain a motion for making these appointments to the committees as they were so wonderfully read by David.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Welcome aboard, good people. Okay. Is that where we are?
there's the
I
end.
would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Eight.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're out of here. See you in 2 weeks.
Record quick meeting. Well,
Yes.
Thanks, BCTV.
What? With healthy discussion.
Interesting.
And awkward discussion.
Sign with electronic pen.